Welcome to episode 208 of the Lone Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about the blockbuster JT Miller trade. And there are also a couple other pretty big trades. There was Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor going to Vancouver. And then today there was Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci going to Dallas. So a lot of moves going on in the last 12, 16 hours or so. And JT Miller being the biggest one, I feel like him going back to the Rangers, it's just kind of the spark they need. I feel like JT Miller, they need a player like him. They need his leadership. They need his offense. They need his defense. And they just need his all-around capabilities. I feel like JT Miller is a guy who's proven to be very reliable offensively over the course of the last 5, 6 years now in the league. And has really evolved from more of a player who's more of a middle six winger to start his career to a legit top line center slash winger in the modern game. And he's just played really well. I feel like when you look at JT Miller's game, highly competitive. He's got a fiery edge to him, and he's not afraid to call guys out. He's not afraid to attack guys directly. He's not afraid of confrontation as a leader. And I feel like sometimes you kind of need that in a room. You need some unconventional personalities. And Miller's kind of that guy where he's not afraid to speak his mind, but at the same time, he can still go out and play his heart out for his team. And like I said, I feel like the Rangers, with how they played this season, they need a type of personality like this, a type A personality who can be really direct and to the point and just be very reliable in terms of their all-around game. And be very steady in the Rangers' presence. Obviously, they're very familiar with him there too in New York. Given that he was drafted there, he eventually worked his way up through the AHL roster and then to the NHL team. And he ended up playing really well for the NHL team for a little bit of time. Obviously, he really blossomed in Vancouver as a 90, 100 plus point scorer and just has continued to evolve from more of a defensive first player early in his career to more of an offense first player. I feel like his mindset's kind of shifted towards that now. Still can provide some defense, even strength on the PK, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's as reliable defensively, and the analytics kind of show that too. But offensively is where you're getting your most value out of him and the most productivity potential out of him. I feel like he's a guy you really want, and he's just a guy. The Rangers did a really good job in this trade too because they probably could have traded more early on, and Vancouver had a very high asking price early on this process. And I feel like over the course of time, as they got more offers and they were really starting to understand what they got and what they could get for Miller, Vancouver, that is, I felt like its value kind of went down, and what they're able to get return would kind of go down a little bit more. I don't feel like this is a good return at all for Vancouver. I feel like with Philip Hedl, he's an unproven middle six center. Victor Mancini, he's an unproven top six defender. And the first round pick there, he flipped to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor, who are steady players, but you're not necessarily getting an offensively reliable player. Like you could have spent that first round pick trying to get someone more reliable inside your top six as a forward rather than trying to get Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. I understand why they did it because they're trying to fill some voids, but it just kind of confuses me. And I really feel like the Canucks could have done way better in this trade. And it's just interesting. I feel like the Rangers did a really good job. Like Philip Hedl wasn't necessarily truly panning out in their system. Victor Mancini was showing potential for a little bit, but wasn't necessarily going to get consistent ice time because they had Braden Schneider there, and obviously you have Adam Fox there. So trying to fill the void with those two is difficult. And it's a good time for them to move on from Mancini. And obviously the first round pick that's already flipped to Pittsburgh, and it's lottery protected. I believe they said it was top 13 protected, and that pick could move to a 2026 pick instead of a 2025 pick, depending on how the Rangers finish in the standings. But JT Miller, I'm curious to see how he produces offensively. I feel like he's a guy, he's played his best hockey at center with Vancouver. So my thought process logically is keep him at center. I don't feel like you need to move him to the wing. He played wing early on in his career a lot with the Rangers, but if you're getting a guy who can really add to your center depth, just keep him there. And he's been very consistent playing center. He's been very reliable offensively playing center. Keep him there and hope he produces. You need to keep him in a top six role too to get the most out of him, especially offensively. And the good thing about this deal too is that you're not acquiring a pending free agent like Mikko Rantanen's deal last week. Mikko Rantanen's a pending free agent, so there's risk attached to it. With this deal, Obviously, he's not like Rantanen. He's a way different player than Rantanen, and Rantanen's better. But with Miller, you're getting a guy who's on a contract with term now. So that helps. And that's certainly beneficial for the Rangers. They don't have to worry about that and the excess work that comes with that. So you're acquiring JT Miller in a stable position who's going back to his home team, who likely will be very not only familiar with the style of play, but also familiar with a lot of the players there. And it's just going to be a good environment for him to come back to the Rangers and be able to played for the team that he was drafted for, and so on and so forth. And the competitive checking ability is something that he's just going to fit really well in Peter Laviolette's system. They play a hard-nosed checking game, especially in their forecheck, their man-to-man coverage, how they check in D zone. Like when you're in Peter Laviolette's system, you're going to be forced to check hard, and you're going to need players who can do that. And JT Miller is just that and more. He's was one of the hardest working players on the Canucks. If you look at up and down their top six in terms of the guys they had, he was just a lethal weapon. And part of me believes that the way he was drafted and the round he was drafted, he wasn't necessarily handed an opportunity early on in his career, and he had to work for everything he got. So I feel like that work ethic's kind of stuck with him over time. And he's just become a very consistent player who can produce so much offensively. And you can even potentially get a 30, 40 goal scorer out of him still, which is amazing because all they had to give up was a depth defenseman, Filipino, and a first rounder. Like you could have given up way more for a player of that caliber, but they didn't necessarily have to. So that's really impressive work by Chris Drury and the Rangers. Obviously, they did their homework trying to research the situation with Pedersen and what was going on there and the rift that they had going on. And you just look at the whole camaraderie of the group now. I feel like Miller's going to be in a better place mentally, knowing that he doesn't have to deal with all this media stuff. Not that he's necessarily going to be affected by it. I feel like a lot of those players just tend to tune it out. And especially when it comes to media coverage, I don't feel like they listen to that stuff or want to listen to that stuff. And but Miller's a guy you can rely upon. So he's gonna have all this media stuff out of the way and can just play hockey and focus on hockey now. And a lot of this media coverage on him is gonna die down, which I'm sure he'll especially enjoy. I'm sure he doesn't mind the attention, but he probably just wants to focus on hockey and wants to win games as much as he can, like any professional athlete who's playing in the NHL. So with Miller, it's a really good deal for the Rangers. I'm really excited to see how he plays. I'm not sure if he's playing today against Boston or not, and I'm not sure what number he's wearing. I believe he might be wearing number 8. I believe last time he wore number 10 with the Rangers, so a little bit different, but it's gonna be a good deal for the Rangers. I'm excited to see how it pans out. And he really rounds out their top nine in terms of the center core they have. They have Mika Zibanejad, you have JT Miller, you have Vincent Trocheck. Speaking of Vincent Trocheck, he was a big advocate to try and get Miller in the first place since they're closely bonded in terms of friendship. So that's huge. And having a player advocate for you like that's huge. And then yeah, JT Miller is gonna be fantastic down the stretch for the Rangers. The series of moves that the Canucks made kind of puzzling, to be honest. I know that they're trying to make their team better, they're trying to improve their team, trying to add a little bit more depth offensively, but it's just interesting to see the players they added. You get Marcus Pedersen, you get Drew O'Connor, like those are steady guys, and then you get Filipino, but they're all improving. That's the issue I'm having. Like if you're getting a consistent player back in both of these deals, that would have made total sense. I would have understood it completely, especially if they weren't a rental. If they had some term on their deal, that would have benefited them even more. But I'm just kind of puzzled by the way the Canucks did this, and they're not necessarily a true playoff contender. Like if a true playoff contender was going out and acquiring these three guys just to ramp up and show up their team, I totally understand that. But with Vancouver, it's not like they can afford the luxury of trying to get rid of all these guys, all these players on a regular basis. They need some consistency in terms of their offense as well.